very little for certain about the life of the Chinese philosopher Confucius. He's said to have been born in 551 BC in China. He may have been a student of the Taoist master Lao Tzu. According to tradition, he began government service and served many roles, including Minister of Crime under Duke Ding in the state of Lu. However, Confucius and the Duke fell out after the Duke received a present from a neighbouring ruler, 80 beautiful women and 124 horses. The Duke spent all his time riding horses and being entertained by the women, which Confucius found deeply improper for a ruler. So he left the court and wandered for years. Around between the 3rd and 5th century BC, Confucius's works were collected into the Analects, a collection of sayings written down by his followers. Some of the morals Confucius taught are easily recognizable, most notably his version of the Golden Rule: do not do unto others what you don't want done to yourself. But some of them also sound very strange or old-fashioned to modern ears, especially to Western ones. But we need his advice all the more for this. It serves as an antidote to the troubles we currently face. Here are a few examples of what Confucius helps us to remember. 1. Ceremony is important. The Analects are filled with strange conversations between Confucius and his disciples, like this one. Tse Kung wished to do away with the offering of a sheep. Confucius said, "Tse, you love the sheep, I love the ceremony." At first this is baffling, if not also humorous. Why not save the sheep? But Confucius is reminding Tse and us about the importance of ceremony. In the modern world, we tend to shun ceremony and see this as a good thing, a sign of intimacy or a lack of pretension. But Confucius believed in the value of ceremonies over sheep because he valued what he called ritual propriety. This might seem a very outdated and conservative idea, but in fact many of us long for particular rituals, that meal Mum cooked for us whenever we were sick, or the yearly birthday outing, or our wedding vows. We understand that certain premeditated, deliberate and precise gestures stir our emotions deeply. Rituals make our intentions clear, and they help us to understand how to behave. 2. We should treat our parents with reverence. In particular, Confucius had a very strict idea about how we should behave towards our parents. He believed that we should obey them when we're young, care for them when they're old, mourn at length when they die, and make huge sacrifices in their memory thereafter. He even said that we shouldn't travel far away while our parents are alive, and should cover for them if they steal a sheep. This attitude is known as filial piety. This sounds strange now, when many of us leave our parents' home as teenagers and rarely return to visit. We may even see them as strangers, arbitrarily thrust upon us by fate. After all, our parents are so out of touch, so pitifully human in their shortcomings, so difficult, so judgmental, and they have such bad taste in music. Yet Confucius recognized that in many ways moral life begins in the family. We cannot truly be caring, wise, grateful and conscientious unless we remember Mum's birthday and meet Dad for lunch. 3. We should be obedient to honourable people. Modern society is very egalitarian. We believe that we're all born equal and should ultimately be able to say and do whatever we like. We reject many rigid hierarchical roles. Yet Confucius told his followers, "Let the ruler be a ruler, the subject, a father, and a son, a son." This might sound jarring, but it is in fact important to realise that there are people worthy of our deep veneration, even our simple and humble obedience. We need to be modest enough to recognise the people whose experience or accomplishments outweigh our own. We should also practice peaceably doing what these people need, ask or command. Confucius explained, "The relation between superiors and inferiors is like that between the wind and the grass. The grass must bend when the wind blows across it." Bending gracefully is in fact not a sign of weakness, but a gesture of humility and respect. 4. Cultivated knowledge can be more important than creativity. Modern culture places a lot of emphasis on creativity, unique insights that come to us suddenly. But Confucius was adamant about the importance of the universal wisdom that comes from years of hard work and reflection. He listed benevolence, ritual propriety, righteousness, wisdom, integrity as the 5 constant virtues. While Confucius believed that people were inherently good, he also saw that virtues like these must be constantly cultivated, just like plants in a garden. He spoke about moral character and wisdom as the work of a lifetime. We can see now why he had such reverence for his elders. Of course, a burst of inspiration may well be what we need to start our business or redo our rough draft or reinvent our life. But if we're being very honest with ourselves, we'll have to admit that we also need to devote more energy to slowly changing our habits. This, more than anything else, is what prevents us from becoming truly intelligent, accomplished and wise. Confucius died without reforming the decadent duke and his officials, but after his death, his followers created schools and temples in his honour across East Asia, passing his teachings along for over 2,000 years. Today, millions of people still follow Confucius's teachings as a spiritual or religious discipline, and his thought has been a huge influence on Eastern political ideas about morality, obedience and good leadership. We might find Confucian virtues a bit strange or old-fashioned, but this is what ultimately makes them all the more important. We need them as a corrective to our own excesses. The modern world is almost surprisingly totally un-Confucian, informal, egalitarian, and full of innovation. So we're conversely at risk of becoming impulsive, irreverent, and thoughtless, without a little advice from Confucius about good behavior and sheep.
That's right. Anyway, you probably have heard of Confucius. You know, the guy who many people think writes for the fortune cookie company.
Wait, he doesn't? Confucius was very influential even to this day, but there are other philosophers throughout Chinese history who also made significant impacts on traditional Chinese culture. There were 7 philosophers, known as the Pre-Qin 7, referring to the 7 great thinkers in the Spring and Autumn Warring States period before the Qin dynasty, who made everlasting impacts through Chinese history.
The 7 philosophers named Kongzi, Mengzi, Han Feizi, Zhuangzi, Mozi, Xunzi, and Laozi. So you probably noticed that all their names all have the zi at the end. Zi literal translation, of course, is kid. But in this case, the zi is added to their name as a sign of respect because they are great thinkers and great teachers. So anybody who was considered a great thinker or teacher, they would be referred to by their last name and the word zi. So if Dan and I were great teachers, we would be called Chenzi.
Nice! Let's start with the philosopher we are all familiar with, Kongzi, or Confucius. He was born in 551 BC in the Lu state of China. His teaching focused on creating ethical models of family and public interaction, personal and governmental morality, justice, sincerity, and setting educational standards.
Confucius's ideas were not embraced during his lifetime, sadly, and he was forced to leave his home state of Lu and wander throughout the different countries. He died in 479 BC.
It wasn't until after the collapse of the Qin dynasty did Confucius's thoughts receive official sanction and were further developed into a system known as Confucianism.
Confucianism later became the official imperial philosophy of China and was extremely influential during the Han, Tang, and Song dynasties.
Confucius's principles had a huge impact in common Chinese tradition and belief. He championed strong family loyalty, ancestor worship, respect of elders by their children, and of husbands by their wives, and coined the well-known principle, do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself.
Number 2, Mengzi or Mencius. He was a thinker whose importance in the Confucian tradition is second only to that of Confucius himself. He was an interpreter of Confucianism and is most famous for his theory of human nature, according to which all human beings share an innate goodness that either can be cultivated through education and self-discipline or squandered through neglect and negative influences, but never lost altogether.
Mencius's disciples included a large number of feudal lords, and he was actually more influential than Confucius had been previous. He expressed his filial devotion when he took 3 years' leave of absence from his official duties for Qi to mourn his mother's death. Disappointed at his failure to effect changes in his contemporary world, he retired from public life.
Number 3, Han Feizi. Elements of Chinese legalist philosophy can be traced to the 7th century BC, but it was Han Feizi who developed the precepts of this political philosophy into its definitive form.
Unlike the other famed philosophers of the time, Han Feizi was a member of the ruling aristocracy, having been born into the ruling family of the state of Han during the end phase of the Warring States period.
Han Feizi belonged to the school of legalism. Legalism assumed that people were naturally evil and always acted to avoid punishment while simultaneously trying to achieve gains. Thus, the law must severely punish any unwanted action, while at the same time reward those who follow it.
His philosophy was very influential and became one of the guiding principles of the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang.
Number 4, Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi lived during the late 4th century in the state of Song. He refused a state office offered to him by the king of Shu and preferred a private and quiet life, or in the words of himself, to drag my tail in the mud like a tortoise.
What does that mean?
You know, you're like a tortoise. and then you have a tail, right? And then so you drag your tail through the mud, like a tortoise. God.
Yeah.
Anyway, Zhuangzi is credited with writing in part or in whole a work known by his name, the Zhuangzi, which expresses a philosophy which is skeptical, arguing that life is limited and knowledge to be gained is unlimited, and to use the limited to pursue the unlimited, he said, was foolish. Number 5, Mozi. Mozi was born in Shandong Province, China. He founded the school of Maoism, whose fundamental doctrine of undifferentiated love challenged Confucianism for several centuries.
Mozi was originally a follower of the teachings of Confucius until he became convinced that Confucianism laid too much emphasis on a burdensome code of rituals and too little on religious teaching, at which time Mozi decided to go his own way.
Mozi's life, however, resembled that of Confucius in many important respects. He was widely read and well-versed in the tradition of Chinese classic. He also was forced to travel, living around the different countries during the warring states.
Mozi is known by many children through his work, The 1,000-Character Classic. This is a Chinese poem used as a primer for teaching Chinese characters to children from the 6th century onward. It contains exactly 1,000 characters, each one used only once, arranged into 250 lines of 4 characters apiece, grouped into 4-line rhyming stanzas to make it easy to memorize. It formed the basis of literacy training in traditional China.
Number 6, Xunzi. Xunzi was a philosopher who was one of the 3 great Confucian philosophers of the classical period in China. He elaborated and systematized the work undertaken by Confucius and Mencius. Xunzi believed man's inborn tendencies need to be curbed through education and ritual. Counter to Mencius's view that man is innately good, he believed that ethical norms had been invented to rectify mankind. Xunzi was a more rigorous thinker and wrote elaborate argued essays which were collected into the book called Xunzi. He distinguishes what is born in man and what must be learned through rigorous education. These essays are often critical of competing schools such as Taoism and Maoism, as well as rival schools within Confucianism.
Number 7, and finally another philosopher who you may be familiar with, Laozi.
Literal translation is old kid.
Old kid.
Ooh.
Laozi is best known as the author of the Tao Te Ching and the founder of Taoism. He is also revered as a deity in the Taoist religion.
As legend has it, Laozi underwent a profound spiritual awakening and then traveled to the western frontier where he disappeared forever into the land of the immortals. The last person he encountered was a gatekeeper named Yin Xi, who requested that Laozi offer to him and all of humanity the essence of the wisdom that had been revealed to him. In response to this request, Laozi dictated what was to be known as the Tao Te Ching.
The Tao Te Ching, often called simply, you guessed it, Laozi, after its author, describes the Tao, or Tao, as the source and ideal of all existence. It is unseen, but not transcendent, immensely powerful, yet supremely humble, being the root of all the things. The Tao Te Ching intends to lead students to a return to their natural state, in harmony with Tao. Wait, so Laozi is...